Pearl was never meant to stay alive. As a whale, she needs oxygen, something she's never gone to the surface to get. But despite that, she somehow has enough to stay alive. So where does she get it from? Well, just like everyone else, she got it from her surroundings. Something changed in everyone in Bikini Bottom, allowing her to get all the oxygen she could ever need. And while no one knows how everyone changed, the answer's been right in front of our eyes the entire time. Let's take a look at the SpongBob breathing theory. Pearl is Mr. Krabs' teenage daughter, but more important than that, she's a whale, or more specifically, a sperm whale, meaning that she needs oxygen to stay alive. But despite that, Pearl's never once come up to the surface to breathe. How could a show with such accurate marine biology mess up such a simple thing? Well, maybe they didn't, because the answer seems pretty simple, right? Pearl's a small character, so we just don't see when she goes up for air. Simple. Well, that's actually not true, because as it turns out, Pearl's never been to the surface on her own. In fact, the only time she went without help, she almost died. In the episode Whale Watching, Pearl ditches Squidward to go to a breach party. By the way, breaching is when whales jump into the air to signal stuff. The word comes up a lot, so I thought you guys should know. Anyways, to get to the party, she has to go to the top of the ocean. But when it comes time to breach, she's a bit scared and confused. She doesn't think it's safe and doesn't want to go through with it. That is until this apparently cool guy named Dylan asks her to, and she goes for it. And pretty much exactly what she expected happened. She ended up getting stuck on land. Not only did she have no knowledge about the surface, but she almost died because of it. Had it not been for Squidward's help, she definitely wouldn't have survived this situation. This was her one and only time she'd been to the surface, is what I would say if she hadn't gone before in the episode Bossy Boots. While explaining to his employees that Pearl is going to be in charge of the Krusty Krab, Mr. Krabs picked up a picture. And in the picture, we saw Mr. Krabs and Pearl on Pearl's first breach. This is the only confirmed evidence of Pearl even leaving the ocean without almost dying. But as we'll learn later, there's a pretty good chance that this picture is fake, meaning that Pearl doesn't have a good record of going to the surface. It's clear that she's scared of it, so she obviously won't go up there on her own. But that's not the entire story, because up until this point, Pearl's had a choice of what to do. Even if she hates the surface and thinks it's dangerous, she can still go up there if it's a matter of life or death. And I'm sure a lot of you know that she can breathe entirely while being underwater. She doesn't actually have to leave the water to breathe. But there's been situations where she didn't breathe for extended periods of time. Like, take a look at the episode Growth Spout. After Pearl gets her growth spout, she's trapped in her house for the entire night. Not once did she leave, and even if she wanted to, she couldn't. She was stuck. If she needed to go to the surface for oxygen, she would have died by drowning. And this isn't a one-time thing. Episodes like Tunnel of Glove and Barnacle Face show her being trapped for hours or even days. If she needed to get oxygen to stay alive, she should have died all these times, but she didn't. And it's because maybe she doesn't need to go to the surface after all. Now that doesn't mean she doesn't need oxygen. In the episode Bubble Troubles, she assures SpongeBob that she's a mammal that breathes it. She even gave some to Sandy because she ran out. It's clear that despite avoiding the surface, Pearl has all the oxygen she could ever need. She isn't struggling or a water breather like a lot of you may have expected. But she's not the only one in this weird situation. Because just like her, there's a lot of people in Bikini Bottom that need to breathe air. Narwhals like Dylan, squirrels like Sandy, even Mr. Krabs, who's based off of a red ghost crab, needs oxygen to stay alive. But the biggest species of air breathers in Bikini Bottom are still whales. And as it turns out, there's more than one species of whales in the entire city. In episodes like High Sea Diving and You Don't Know Sponge, we see a different type of whale species. Just like Pearl, they also have the same questionable moments. They need to breathe oxygen, but they don't go to the surface to get it. But there's something similar in all the examples we've looked at so far. All the whales, and in general all the air breathers, have one thing in common. They all have free will. That means if they needed to, they could go to the surface and get the oxygen they need to stay alive. But there is one person we haven't looked at yet, someone who doesn't have access to this luxury, and yet he's still alive. The person I'm talking about is this guy. This is who I like to call the jail whale. He's a sperm whale just like Pearl, and is usually a background character who we mostly see in prison-related episodes. But there's just one thing about him that never made sense. How does this guy stay alive? Because unlike the rest of the other guys, he doesn't have free will. Even if he's drowning, he can't go to the surface to breathe. And it's not like they're escorting this buff, dangerous prisoner to the top of the ocean every 45 minutes. That means he too can stay alive without going to the surface, just like Pearl and all the other air breathers. But how does that work? How can someone breathe oxygen while staying underwater the entire time? Well, luckily for him, there is something that's been keeping him alive. A mechanism that came about millions of years ago that's been working its magic all along. Evolution.